He's an old head.
Youngins are really starting to get on my damn nerves.
He's a purveyor of nonsense. He's a Georgia high school coaching job influencer. His favorite Bible verse is Jesus wept. He's the man of constant sorrow, Chris Lamb.
Yeah.
Welcome to Sun Coaches Podcast, and today do I have a treat for you. He is an 8th degree Mok'bara black belt. He is a nunchuck enthusiast. He's a Bigfoot believer. He's also the head football coach at Glynn Academy, Coach Rocky Hidalgo. Thanks for being on with us, Coach.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate it.
Most people don't know that is Klingon judo. But
that is exactly right. I'm a Trekkie. I used to roommate. My roommate for a time was a Trekkie, and he was this little bitty guy. He's about 5'6". He was ugly. He looked like a damn bridge troll. He's freaking ugly as shit. And he was a Star Trek guy. He would set his alarm clock because Star Trek: The Next Generation came on like at 1 a.m. or something like that, and he'd wake up in the morning and get up and watch it on TV. And so for some reason I got into Star Trek watching it with him. So that's it. I call myself a Trekkie now, I guess. I do watch the show, or at least I used to.
Well, that's awesome. And you're originally from Louisiana.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? Yep. And where did you go? You played college ball?
I played college ball at Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee, where the men are men and the girls are too, as they used to say. But I played 4 years there for Mike Clary, and I coached a year there, coached outside linebackers, and realized I did not like starving to death. So I went into high school football. That's how I became a high school football coach.
And where was your first high school job at?
Man, I was my first job was at Walton High School for working with Ed Dudley. I was out, I was trying to get a job during the whole recruiting process. And it came down, I had 3 choices of jobs. And one of them was Walton High School. One of them was St. Paul's, working for a guy by the name of Eddie Guth, who used to coach at Rome High School Darlington High School in Rome, Georgia. And he's a Rhodes College graduate. And another one, I always wanted to go out west and see the mountains. We went out there to play a football game, and I applied for some places out in Colorado and got a job offer from this new school out in Colorado, Columbine High School. And and those were the 3 places I chose when I came down. I ended up going to Walton. Walton was, that was right before the Olympics came. And Walton was Atlanta was a place to be if you were young and single. So I figured I'd go to Atlanta and go hang out in Buckhead and do some of that stuff. And I realized as a first year teacher, I didn't have money to do those things anyway. So all I did was coach football and in track for my first 4 or 5 years when I was in the state of Georgia.
Coach Dudley, one of the best dudes ever.
Yeah, he is. He's one of my best friends. He taught me a ton of football. I think one of the things Ed taught me as a coach was you can learn what not to do just as easily as you can learn what to do. And so to be aware, like we used to go watch up in if you've never taught in Metro, coached in Metro Atlanta, you're around a lot. You're so close, the proximity to other schools. So we were very fortunate. If we weren't in the playoffs or we had got knocked out of the playoffs, we could go watch. Went to Bruce Cobley's practice at Harrison High School, and Jimmy Dorsey's practice at McEachern, and Marty Galbraith was the head coach at Lasser. Went over and watched him, and Bob Lord, who's a legend in coaching. Bob Lord was at Pope. Dave Hunter over at Brookwood, and there were Ray Manus at Roswell. And I got a chance to go watch a lot of really good coaches coach when I was a young coach, and watch what Ed always says: if you don't know what it's supposed to look like, then you don't know you're doing it wrong. And so I got a chance to go watch a lot of good coaches run their practice, really good high school coaches. And at the same time, I went to some places that weren't run very well, and the contrast between the two made a big impact on me. And the other thing is I spent a lot of time at Georgia Tech when George O'Leary was the head coach at Georgia Tech. Still the best football practices I've ever seen on a college campus. Unbelievable. And I mean, that made a big impact on me as a young coach, just watching those guys coach. I mean, I'm just very fortunate. I grew up with Ed, and Ed was a great coach, but he introduced me to a lot of great coaches. I got to see a lot of great coaches work, a lot of great assistants work, and how guys coached and went about their business. And, it was from an educational standpoint, it was invaluable.
Well, how long did you stay as an assistant at Walton?
I was an assistant there for 13 years. And, I was offered my first head job when I was 28. And again, Dave Hunter told me when I was young, before I ever was offered a job, that, you need to make a good decision on your first job, because, that's going to be the measuring stick for a long time. If you miss on that one, it'll be a while before you can get another one. So I got some great advice from T. McFerrin on applying for jobs and interviewing and what jobs to take and how to a process and the approach to do those things. One of the things T had told me is make your list of things that you want, that you need to take the job. This is your bare bones. You're not going to take the job if they give you this. Do that before you go into interview for the job. And if they don't give it to you, it's not an emotional decision. You just turn it down. And so I did a few of those. I had, and probably the one job I turned down that I probably should have taken was the Kell High School job. I think Irv Sigler ended up getting the job. Dr. Johnson, I believe, Mike Johnson, I think was the principal over there. They offered me the head job and I turned it down, and I probably should have taken it. That was probably a good job, but I was there for 13 years. I coached the offensive line. I coached JV football. Coached the defensive line. I was the JV defensive coordinator at one point in time, the JV offensive coordinator, the JV head coach, and kind of worked my way up through that. A lot of guys, Lamb, a lot of guys coming in this business, they don't want to work with the ninth grade, don't want to work with the JV, but man, that was the most fun I ever had. And I learned more football doing it myself. I learned what not to do. You learn how to, calling a JV game, you learn how to manage the clock. You learn how to, substitute personnel. And, man, it was just I did all those things before I became the defensive coordinator. I wanted to be an offensive coordinator, ended up becoming a defensive coordinator, and really made my name as a defensive coach in Georgia, not an offensive coach. If you'd have told me that when I was 23 years old, I'd have looked at you and said, you're crazy.
Right. And that's what me and Aligo were talking the other day when I had him on, when he hired me to come over there and coach ninth grade OL. I was like, I've never done OL, and it was the best job I've ever had. I mean, I'm older now, so I loved it. It was great.
Well, and the thing is, what people don't understand is nothing grows in a comfort zone. So you got to get out of that comfort zone a little bit. You got to get out of that comfort zone a little bit and go out there. That's how you improve and how you evolve. And I think when you go in, and a lot of times guys are hesitant to coach something they traditionally don't coach, or change jobs. Man, one of the best things for me was coming to Glynn Academy. It was I'd been climbing the same mountains at Walton for so many years, even as an assistant coach. Just having a change of scenery really invigorated my coaching career, made me a better coach, and I had to learn how to deal with new problems.
So when did you leave Walton to go to Glynn?
I was a head coach at Walton for 5 years. I took over for Ed, and we played in the state championship game in 2011. They almost fired my ass at the end of about halfway through year two. And this is, you want to talk about, you learn on the fly as a head coach. You're never really ready to be a head coach. You got to figure it out. And we started 6-0. We beat Norcross in the Corky Kell Classic in my first game in overtime, blocked an extra point to win the game. Started 6-0 my first year, lost the last 4 games of the season. And my quarterback, who was a kid of questionable character, let me just say that. And he played really well the first 6 weeks. did everything we asked to do, and just really struggled surviving success. In the last 4 weeks, he had 13 fourth quarter turnovers in the last 4 weeks when we went 0-4.
Mm.
And I learned something from that. I learned you got to be able to count on, if you're going to, especially at the quarterback position, you got to be able to trust that guy. You can't trust him. Your ship is, you're in dangerous seas at that point. So I learned that. That was something I learned my first year. You got to be able to trust your quarterbacks. The guy you got to be able to count on, even if you got to know what you're going to get out of him. And the kid was a tremendous athlete, but he just made some bad decisions, tried to do too much, and it was one of those deals that we went 0-4 in the last 4 games, missed the playoffs for the first time in like 13 years. Came back the next year, and we had a young team, and we started 1-3. So I was 1-7 in my last 8 games, and they wanted to run my ass out of town. There were a lot of people want to run me out of town. And I had to look in the mirror. We had an off week, and I just went down and I said, and I probably run my program very different than a lot of people do. I sat down and I thought about everything that I didn't like about football as a player. And I said, we're not doing any of these things anymore. We're not doing any of the things that I didn't like as a player anymore. And we won the last 6 games, made the playoffs, played in the state championship game the next year. And I've kind of been tweaking that formula ever since. I try to make the game. I want my kids to play fast. I want them to have fun, and I want them to care about each other. Those are the only 3 rules I have. And so I've kind of built my career on those 3 principles right there. The kids play football. They don't work football. So, and there's a particular amount of work that you got to have in football, but I'm not going to kill my kids. I'm not going to, these aren't college. I know guys who run their program like college programs. They're not college coaches. They're not paid like college coaches. They're not college athletes. They're not getting paid to be here. So I want them to be teenagers. I want them to enjoy the time that they have in our football program, and they show up at the weight room, they hit the practice field. I want them to care about each other, and I want them to be excited about coming to practice and representing Glynn Academy football. And that's kind of, I made that decision like halfway through my second year. If they were going to fire me, I was going to make this stuff fun for the kids, because it was miserable for me because I was under so much pressure trying to win games and stuff. And so that was a big change for me. And that's kind of how I've run things ever since.
Well, what made you decide, I mean, besides it's at the beach, what made you decide to go leave Atlanta and go to Brunswick?
Yeah, I think I just needed to change. Walton is probably the best school day you'll have. It's a great community. The people there are awesome. They took care of me, but I just needed to change for me personally. My family, we wanted to do something different. And I'll be honest with you, Lamb, I almost died in November of 2010. I had like 13 blood clots, pulmonary embolisms. Doctor told me I had, based on that, it's a miracle that I survived. I had less than 2% chance of surviving. And, we ended up playing the state championship game the next year. But, the kids at Walton were great kids, but I never felt like they didn't necessarily need me in my life. And I just had a calling to go do something different.
Right.
To go work with different kids. And the kids at Walton are very successful. Everything they do up there, they're good at, and they are. So like I said, it's a unique community. They're the barrier, the bar is excellence there. And that's what everybody does. The moms and dads, or everybody's, got a ton of money. They're all college educated. The kids are going to go to great schools, are going to get great jobs, all those things. There wasn't a lot of kids that necessarily needed me in their life, other than I felt like I was coaching football, and in certain ways, and I just felt like I needed to change. And I was, say what you want. I felt like I was being called to go somewhere else and work with kids who needed me in their life. And that's kind of how I ended up at Glynn Academy. When I interviewed at Glynn Academy, I had 13 no's on my checklist about why I shouldn't take the job. And for every rational reason, I should have turned the job down. It wasn't as good a job as the one I had in Atlanta. any of those things, but I felt compelled to take it. And I say that I felt called to take it because I felt like I came down here and this is where I was supposed to be, to work with these kids. And I work with a lot of kids who have issues, who, a lot of single parent homes, a lot of very socioeconomically diverse community. And I just feel like I'm needed here, if that makes sense to you.
Oh, no, it makes perfect sense to me. That's one of the reasons. Yep. I mean, I've made no bones about the fact that I don't like Atlanta. And
yep.
A lot of it has to do with, I grew up in Columbia County right outside of Augusta and went to a very affluent high school and with very affluent kids. And I don't resonate with those. They don't need me.
Yeah.
And I've never coached those kids, and I don't gravitate towards those kids, and those kids don't gravitate towards me. Yeah. So I get exactly what you're saying.
And look, I love the kids there, love the community there, and they were great for me, but they were, I could have coached there for 30 years. I always thought I would coach there for 30 years. Just something for me was lacking about the job there, that the fulfillment I get in my job with helping the kids that I have now that genuinely need me. And I have a lot of kids who genuinely need me in their life. And for me, it has invigorated me as a coach. I go to work every day and I'm going to deal with, 10 different problems today, and there'll be 10 different problems tomorrow. And sometimes it's a headache. But at the end of the day, when I put my head on the pillow and I go to bed, I feel like I've made my community a better place. And some of these kids just need me to be there for them, whatever it is, whether it's a ride home, it's a meal, just somebody to talk to, somebody to look at them and make sure they're doing their homework. And I'm fortunate. I've got a good group of men that care about these young men, and they work hard for them. And, we're going to keep churning butter down here on the coast as long as they let me.
Well, I mean, you're also getting to spread the gospel of not putting your grocery carts up.
Ain't that the truth?
I mean, let's talk about that. I mean, when did you realize that that's a problem?
Well, here's my deal is, people post on that. I think it's ridiculous. I think people, I have kids that got a lot more damn pressing issues than putting their grocery cart up. And I have kids that don't have power in their home. And I mean, it's that's not the be all end all. And I understand the idea about culture, and these guys, culture was really easy at Walton. It's really easy at Walton because the caliber of kid you have. They come to school, they've had breakfast, they've got clothes, they've got their power and their lights are turned on. Their mom and dad got up, made sure they got to school and all that stuff. When you work with kids that don't have those things, culture's hard. And so, to me, I look at it as caring over culture a little bit. But that idea that I think it's ridiculous. People post about that. I kind of make a big deal about that. I know that's one of those deals on, that it's the be all end all, that you put your shopping carts up. And, probably as a good Samaritan, you probably should put your shopping carts up. But damn it, I do remember as a child, my mom would take us in there and some guy would bag our groceries and bring the shopping cart out to the car, unload the shopping, all the bags in the back of your car, and take the shopping cart back. Groceries haven't gotten any less expensive. And that's why I say all the time, it's a scam. It's a scam on the American consumer, probably the greatest scam, because they have convinced us that we should put our shopping carts up every damn day when we go to the grocery store. And it's not the responsibility at Publix or Winn-Dixie or Harris Teeter. I don't work at any of those places.
I was a bag boy in high school, and I was the guy who put the groceries in your car and took and if I did it nicely enough, sometimes they would give me 50 cents or $1. And if they did, great. And if they didn't, it didn't matter because I was getting paid anyway, because that was my job. That's
right. And you just did it. And back then the CEO of Publix didn't make $40 million a year, and they could afford it. Now that guy makes $100 million a year, and suddenly they can't afford a guy to walk out there to your car and do those things. So
and Cocoa Puffs weren't $6 a box.
That's exactly right. We've lost something in American society for some of those things. And part of it is I'll kind of go down a rabbit hole about some of this a little bit, but it's about, I'm a firm believer it's part of men, what we've lost in society. Men are responsible for that, a big chunk of it. but we've lost all those little things that we used to do. I mean, when you think about the world that we live in, America, we were able to build bridges and cut roads and railroads through mountains and all those things. And now we can't afford to fix damn potholes in the street.
No, can't be
Nobody
done.
wondered.
Can't do
Nobody,
it.
yeah. Nobody worries about that shit anymore. And that stuff drives me crazy. If you go back and look at, 100 years ago, the things we were able to do in this country, and we can't do the simplest things nowadays. And as a citizen, it drives me nuts. All you got to do is look at history and see the things that the American people accomplished. And that, to me, that doesn't fall necessarily on the government so much it is the American civilian, but really as men, we've done a poor job as men upholding our responsibility to society, and so I'll tell you, I preach this to our kids all the time, is that, that's our job. We got to learn to be a man. Football is one of the few places on this planet where boys get an opportunity to go turn into men. It's one of the few places. I'll die on that hill, and somebody may disagree with me, but man, it teaches toughness and integrity and character, and teaches sacrifice, which is one of the things that we are sorely lacking in our society. It's why volunteerism is down across our country. Nobody wants to give of themselves to help people up and raise people up. And I think that starts with men. I do. I think it starts with men. We have to be better men about those things every day when we walk the streets, and how we conduct business, and how we deal with young men and boys, how we train them to be those things.
Well, and I'm I'm wearing Bigfoot socks today. I'm a big Bigfoot guy, and I love how people they'll poo-poo Bigfoot. There's no way that there could be an ape-like hominoid creature somewhere in Canada or, wherever, when there are places in Pulaski County where I live that no humans ever been, much less Alberta. But they'll sit there and tell you that, they're aliens, but there can't be a Bigfoot. And I'm like, well, that's counterproductive to a logical argument. And you want me, you have no faith in mankind to say, like the Ancient Aliens show, everything was built by aliens. You don't give mankind any kind of credit that they were smart enough to come up with this stuff.
That's exactly right.
The aliens had to have done it. So you're telling me that aliens flew billions of light years or however many, or just let's say 1 light year here, and they had the technology to do that. And the best they could show us is, hey, y'all stack these rocks up so they look like a pyramid.
That's stuff that drives me crazy. Like people talk about like the Nazca lines, that might be a landing pad for aliens. Mm-hmm. Man, come on. These people come all the way across the galaxy in spaceships. They can't bring no damn lights with them. Yeah. They can't. Come on. And they built stuff out of rocks. That's exactly right.
And they couldn't show us indoor plumbing or how the toilet flushes or, something. Come on, man. I mean, that don't even make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, that stuff.
And it's the same thing, with the culture thing. And you hit the nail on the head yesterday with the thing. That's why, at the beginning of this podcast, and it's on my profile, my favorite Bible verse is the shortest one, Jesus wept. Yeah. I've done a month-long Bible study on just that Bible verse before in front of grown men before. Yeah. And I'm sick and tired of watching these so-called Jesus guys that I watch how they act and carry on, and they're like, oh, well, you're not supposed to. Let me tell you something. I'm the kind of Christian that is when he comes back, I'm that one. Yeah. When stuff gets torn up and blown up, I'm that guy. Because I'm tired of watching these guys hide behind, it's exactly what you said the other day. Gives you plausible deniability when, I was looking the other day before. I mean, this was like 2 weeks ago. I was like, let me see what I can find in here about acting, I don't know, shady. What does it say in here about recruiting kids? Getting kids to do this and that. I mean, it's interesting to me, and so this is the whole. And everybody knows, and everybody in this. There are two types of people in the coaching business right now in high school football, and probably in all the other ones. They're the group that's too chicken shit
to go out and coach the kids in their hall and go play ball with them. And then there are the other guys who just walks in every day and these are my kids and I'm going to go to war with them. And they may not be good enough to win, but we're going to fight our ass off for them. Those are the two types of people in the coaching business. Right now. And it's unfortunate, you hear, and I sit on the Georgia Football Coaches Association board and, we go to these meetings. We've had discussions with the GHSA about the recruiting stuff and, GHSA will never ask me back in the room, because, I just threw it on the table with them but we're not fooling anybody.
No,
you hear guys sitting here telling this school over here has got 24 Form Bs this year. I've been a head coach for 15 years. I haven't had 24 Form Bs in 15 years, and I get it. It's the head. I don't believe the head coaches are going out and doing any recruiting. I don't believe that, but I know how that stuff works, and I know how it goes. Those guys, right? They've got a dude, and it, Coach, and everybody out there in this business, they got a guy in the community who's bringing kids in, and everybody knows who it is. And he's doing all the recruiting for them. Everybody just turns a blind eye and we just move on with our lives. But for all that stuff, I blame guys like the superintendents and the principals because they're low integrity people too, is because they know what's going on. They know people are fabricating residential information. They know if your starting tailback lives in your community or not,
And if you're going to have the rules, enforce the rules. And now we're fixing to have somebody that's going to run the GHSA coming from a city school system. How's that going to go?
Yeah. Well, my argument to them is we had that meeting about recruiting is that we need to make a decision. Are we going to be Texas or are we going to be Florida? And, the GHSA stance is where our rules are the envy of everybody in America.
Oh, yeah. We've always been that arrogant. That started with Swearingen. I
was like, come on, man. I mean, look, you're not fooling it, but we're closer to Florida than we are with Texas. And the whole deal is they don't want to fight lawsuits. Somebody's going to sue them because, it just comes down to the whole thing. We got to have courage. The men in charge have to have courage to do the things that are right. That's it. And that's where we are in society because everybody is terrified of saying what is right, of doing the right thing because they're going to get crucified. They're going to get sued. Somebody's going to say mean things to them. And, we need more people in charge that's going to upset the apple cart. That's
yeah. Well, I mean, you can't, in these days in education, you can't do that. You can't tell, they don't want to hear the truth. And it's because we've got people that were the last ones picked for kickball games that are now running school systems.
That was a great tweet.
And that are administrators.
Yeah.
And I don't even think they were picked. I think the coach said, no, y'all got to take them.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are in charge now. They sure aren't coaches.
Yeah. What I have always said is this has been the problem is, 40 or 50 years ago, the head football coach, the head basketball coach, those guys ended up being the principal and eventually became the superintendent and all that stuff. And they were people that had made decisions and people had been critical of them throughout their career. And so when people criticize them, they didn't back down and crawfish on it. And what we have now is nowadays you got to get a degree to do that. And so while all these guys are coaching ball, you have all these super teachers that go in there they're great teachers. But because you have the skill set to be a great teacher doesn't make you a great administrator.
No.
And the first thing they do is when they get a young, sharp teacher, they try to fast track him into administration. And a lot of them don't spend enough time in the classroom.
Mm-mm.
And so they think they know anything and everything when they get in administration. That's the first thing. But the biggest issue with them is they've never made a decision that somebody's been critical of. So they don't know how to respond to somebody being critical of them. And I'm fortunate that we've got a really good superintendent at Glynn Academy. My principal's a former coach. He's a soccer coach, but he's an athletic guy. We're very fortunate, but I talk to guys every day who are stuck in jobs with administrators who are former high school counselors, and they just don't get it. They don't get it, and they allow themselves to be pushed around. As soon as you let one person push you around, you're gonna have a bunch of them come in there push you around.
Well, and they fast track some of these teachers into administration. I mean, they ought to be like you ought to have to teach 10 years.
Yeah.
Or, there ought to be some number. And then, a lot of them, they think they're the cat's meow or they're the hottest thing smoking. And what did you teach? Oh, I was an AP physics teacher. Yeah, I bet they're real hard to teach. They probably teach probably teach themselves.
Yep.
Let me know how you do with the 2s and 5s.
Yes. You say that. I used to go, when I was at Walton, I was an English teacher, and we'd have to go observe other people's classes. And so I went to this one guy's class, and he was, teacher of the year, all that stuff. And he was a good teacher. He really was. Knew his stuff, cared about the kids. But at that point in time in his career, he was teaching all AP classes. The kids basically taught the class, and he evaluated them on how the lesson plans they presented and all that stuff. And, I was thinking to myself, what a complete waste of time this is to have me come and watch his class, because I am teaching. I'm a football coach teaching English. They give you, this, if you're in the classroom, you're a football coach. They give you the dregs of society right now. Yeah. They're going to look at you and go, hey, man,
he can handle it.
That's exactly. He can handle all the ED and BD kids, and they're going to stick him in there. I had an issue. And when I was teaching English, I had a 3-level. That was low-level seniors, senior Brit Lit, and then back-to-back class I had advanced comp for kids that had failed, seniors who had failed an English class, need to make up a credit. So I had these kids. I had 19 kids that were BD or ED in the class. They didn't put a team teacher in the class with me, and it was my first year as a defensive coordinator. And, I was going to tell the administrator, I said, man, y'all got to do something about these kids, because, I write, they're a couple of them act a fool. You don't want me to put hands on them. I write them up, and you go, well, he's BD. I just send him back to class to do the same thing. I lost my shit one day. I did. I lost my shit. And I went and kicked the damn principal's door down. And I flat told get off his ass and do his job. And he was in a meeting with the head of the PTA and the head of the Facilities Foundation. And I'm not lying. I kicked the damn door off the hinges. I went in there. His administrative assistant told me the door, he's in a meeting right now, and the door was locked. And I Starsky and Hutch kicked that damn door in.
Starsky
and walked in. Hutch. I did. I walked in and told his ass, I said, man, you don't do shit around here. But I had them, but see, again, I had been advised by older coaches, because they were out of compliance, because I had 19 BD kids in this class. I was supposed to have a bunch of teachers in here with me.
Now.
And I talked to an administrator, and I talked to an attorney, and I documented everything before I went and spoke Now, I called him on cell phone. I said, man, I've had enough of shit. And he goes, go get them, because we've done everything we could. We've requested them do this. I went and kicked that damn door in. And they wanted to fire me until they realized I was in the right. And then they took both those classes away. It was the best year I ever had teaching, because I didn't have to teach any classes the rest of the year. They put all those kids in small group. I should do that more often, to be honest with you. But that's the problem when you're you coach. They stick the worst kids in there, and it's not fair to look at a coach and go, well, Miss Johnson's over here. She's teaching on level English, and her kids scored at a 87% achievement rate, and Coach Hidalgo scored at an 83. Well, Coach Hidalgo's got every kid that's in ISS every week. That's the world that coaches live in.
It doesn't come to school on a regular basis.
That's right.
For whatever reason.
That's the ones we teach.
Yeah.
That's the ones we teach. And that's the part where those teachers who don't coach don't understand. If you took coaches out of the equation, you took football coaches out of social studies and math and science and all those places that teach those kids, all those kids would be in their classrooms now. Mm-hmm. That school day changes with just one or two of those guys. That damn school day gets a lot worse in a hurry.
Oh, absolutely. My favorite thing now that administrators try to tell me, who has a child with an IEP and who I'm certified in special ed, try to tell me what they can and can't do discipline-wise with a special ed kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, you can do what you want to do.
Yeah.
You're just too freaking lazy to do what needs to be done. And,
that's it.
And then they're not getting support from up top, higher up or whatever. Yeah. So we're going to sacrifice the whole, we're going to sacrifice 24 kids for one that can't act right.
Yeah.
And that's what it's turned into. And it's unfortunate. I mean, I'm not evangelical. I'm not trying to save, you know, you're 16, 17, 18 years old. If you're not EBD, if you're not BD, ED, none of those other letters give you the right or absolve you from behaving like everyone else.
Yeah.
You can't read. That's unfortunate. You have a specific learning disability. That's unfortunate. Doesn't mean you can wreak havoc in the classroom.
That's exactly right.
That is not a manifestation of your disability.
All those other kids got a right to learn in there too.
Absolutely. And that's you know, and that's the problem. We're catering to that, you know, and then it's just, I don't know. I'm glad I'm on the back end.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I love kids and as, you know, as much as I love kids, as much as I love doing it, I couldn't imagine this being year 5 and having 25.
It is tough, but I do think things will swing back. And I'll say this about the guy I work for right now. He don't take a whole lot of shit off of them, and they keep being problems. He'll look around and go, "Hey man, you going to alternative school." And so I know other places where they don't, and the school day is a nightmare. You've got to put some, you know,
well, there have to be consequences. Yeah, well, there have to be consequences, and they have to be severe enough to get their attention.
That's right. And that's, you know, Dave Hunter told me one time, this was talking about dealing with parents, about, you know, if parents are causing you problems. He says, sometimes you got to sacrifice a hostage and you got to do it publicly. And he said, you know, you do one, the rest of them will fall in line. And there's some truth to that. And there's truth to that the same way when your administrators are dealing with problem students. Sometimes you just got to take care of one. And so everybody sees it. And then, so they know that, hey, we're not messing around. And I mean, there's too much of that. You know, there's a great, I just listened to, I tweeted about it, that Abigail Schreier's podcast with Joe Rogan. It's a great talk. And it talked about how we're screwing up kids, in you know, kids are suffering from all these different things, and, you know, anxiety and depression and suicide rates are up and all these things. And it's because we're not essentially, we're not going back and doing the things we did to make the country great in the first place, you know, 50, 60 years ago, where we held people accountable. We disciplined our children. We made things hard on people. We looked at people and said, hey, look, you know, your life's going to be the product of the decisions you make good decisions. And when they made bad decisions, there were consequences about it. We don't do that very much anymore. And so people never learn. And that's the people we're creating. And you hear corporate America complaining about the kids are getting out of college. These are the kids who are getting out of college. They don't know how to be wrong.
No, you know? They're narcissists.
That's it.
And we're getting coached. We're trying to hire people. We're trying, these young coaches come out. And it goes way yonder beyond when we were young and thought we knew everything.
Look, it does. And, you know, I was having a conversation with a young coach the other day, and he was telling me that he was thinking about getting out of coaching because the time commitment. He coaches middle school ball. Okay. He coaches middle school football. I'm thinking about getting out because the time commitment. I'm going to work for FCA. I was like, all right, well, that's an interesting choice. You know, he's got young kids, and he goes, I want to be there with them when they come home from school. And I was like, son, do you realize FCA, what's that stand for? Fellowship of Christian Athletes. When do the athletes play ball? After school. I said, so when are you going to have to go to work after school? You know, and then I got into the idea about like the mythical 40-hour work week. I know a lot of really successful people. My sister has been super successful, has made a ton of money. I don't know any person who's super successful who works a 40-hour work week. That's a myth. People who work 40-hour work weeks are not people who get ahead in life. And that's just not is what it is. And people look around and they think of it as, oh, I'm a slave to a corporate America. Well, what, you know, I talked to one of my students was talking about, you don't have to do that in life. And I was like, well, what are you going to do, Charlie?
Well, if you want to eat.
That's exactly right. If you want to eat, you want to have something.
You want to have nice stuff.
you know, before everybody did all this stuff, You worked 140 hours a week because you had to go out in the yard and grow your own crops and feed the horses. Go work on a goddamn farm, pardon my language. Go work on a farm, a real farm for about 4 weeks and go live that life. Because I got relatives who do that too, and that's daylight to dark. That's 12-hour days, 7 days a week. That's a pipe dream that we feed people, that you can exist on less than a 40-hour work week. We're going to turn back the clocks and go in this green world, and we're going to all grow our own food and raise chickens in the backyard. I promise you'll spend more than 40 hours a week working to sustain your family if you do those things. It's crazy to think about those things, but that's where we are. That we sell these kids that they can go and just put their cell phone on and become multimillionaires on YouTube and stuff like that, and it's just going to be easy. It's
Well, today
we set people up for failure.
Well, today I'm sitting there on duty this morning, and somebody behind me made the comment. Younger person said that we got on a conversation about year-round school, and well, if we had year-round school, you'd get a week off every 9 weeks, and you'd still get a summer vacation, but you just have year-round school. Well, then I'd have to deal with finding childcare. Some of us have other responsibilities, like the rest of us didn't have no kids.
Yeah, that's
like the rest of us hadn't had to do it. Well, sweetheart, life's full of choices.
That's
you ain't got to work. You could stay at home with your child.
And have less stuff.
Or you could have not had children, or you could move somewhere where there's better childcare. Or, there's all kind of, don't sit here and throw it back on us like we didn't make those sacrifices and those same decisions. But that's their mentality.
Yeah. Oh, and they also believe that we got out of college. You and I got out of college at 23 years old and just had a shitload of money.
Oh yeah, and we're head coaches, just like coordinators, just like that.
Well, but even outside of school system, people working in corporate America think that you just got out of school and you start a job. I watched something the other day that this girl was saying, you don't understand what it's like. You could buy a Cadillac on $30,000 a year, and that was the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. I had been married 10 years before my wife and I took a vacation. A decade. We couldn't afford.
We ain't been on one yet.
I lived in a house. We lived in a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house that I bought. And when I jogged, I used to jog at night before my arthritis got bad in my knee. I'd go jog in the neighborhood at night, and the cats down the road were selling drugs in the road. People drive through. You'd hear them when I'd come through, they'd start screaming 50, 50 and start boarding up the house. I don't want to hear that stuff. We were broke. That's what we did. You just spent the money you had, and we didn't go on vacation. We didn't buy a whole lot of nice stuff, and we ate it. A night out for us was eating at Carrabba's instead of Olive Garden. That was kind of it. Olive Garden, free breadsticks and salad. That was what we did for our anniversary every year. And we just didn't have a lot of money back then. And, we paid our cell phone bills off, and our student loans. And eventually over time, you kind of you pull yourself up by the bootstraps, but nobody wants to do that. They believe, we have this belief that the American dream means wealth, and that's not what it means.
And that you're entitled to it.
Yeah.
You just automatically get it.
That's right. You're just everybody's supposed to be rich. That's not what it says.
No.
It says prosperity. And, my dad was a bricklayer, man. He left high school, got drafted, went to Vietnam. And fortunately for him, he drew a golden ticket, and he was a forward observer in the military. At the time, the field life of a forward observer in Vietnam was like 32 days. They were killing their ass, like damn red ants over there. He got a golden ticket and got shipped to Korea and did his tour of duty in the DMZ in Korea. And came back home, and shit, man, all thing he knew how to do was shoot a machine gun. And so he went to work and laid bricks, and the guy laid bricks his entire life. My dad's 76 years old. He's still laying brick. To this day, he's a bricklayer. He don't know anything different other than just get up and go to work every day. But he's lived a good life. He's raised 3 good kids. He's, had a nice house, boats, fishes, but there's no guarantees. There's nothing in that Bill of Rights or the Constitution or any of that says you get to be rich and you get to be Elon Musk or any of those things. You know,
And if
I never got
everybody's
to take
rich,
the
then we're
cheerleader.
all the same.
That's right.
That's communism.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because of the inherent
You know.
greed of man. When I taught economics one year, I showed the kids, I said, well, yeah, in theory, it's a great idea. It would be nice if everybody had stuff, but let's play a game. Here, everybody gets a bottle cap. And I took some 20-ounce, Coca-Cola bottle caps, and I passed them out. And I said, for the next week, anything you want in this classroom can be purchased with a bottle cap. And by the end of the week, I had all the bottle caps.
Yeah.
And I said, now who's got all the wealth? Me. Does everybody have the same amount of bottle caps? No. So it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a great idea, but it doesn't work. Now I have all of the bottle caps and I'm in charge, and I say, shut up, sit down, and do this.
That's right.
And that's just not how, my father worked in a paper mill from the time he was 18 till he was 65.
Yeah.
And his father worked at Procter & Gamble the same kind of way. Me and you grew up the same kind of way. And I knew work. That's why they sent me to school, because he didn't want me to have to work shift work.
Hey, let me tell you, the greatest motivator in my life was working on a brick stack when I was 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. And because I didn't want to do that for a living. I didn't like being covered in grit and being up on roofs and catching brick and all that stuff. That's why I went to college, because I didn't want to end up doing that, Oh,
and my dad made more money than I've ever made.
Yeah.
They were union. He got paid by the hour, but he worked. And he, there was he missed a bunch of ball games, and he missed a bunch of, holidays and stuff like that. But it was because he was trying to make sure we had a roof over our head and clothes on our backs and food on the table. And
that's what's required of him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That was his job, because he was a man. And he was the provider, and my mama raised us. That was her job.
And, people don't understand that whole thing, that you have to sacrifice things. There is no profession out there. You have to give something up. So, whether it's, and look, I have spent 29 years coaching kids and coaching other people's kids. I don't feel like I've missed anything. Now, I'm not one of these guys that we don't work until 11 o'clock at night. And if my coaches, if they've got their kids got a baseball game or something, I say, hey man, you go take care of that stuff. I'm a big believer that, you go take care of your family. I think that's really important, but I don't feel like I've missed really anything with my kids. I hear guys talk about that they were high school coaches and they missed all this time with their kids. I'm going, well, man, what were your kids doing? Are they not at practice with you? My kids were on the practice field with me. My kids were, they've been around me the whole time when I've been out there. But if you can't have success without giving something up. And so, you either, if you want to be home the whole time and work 40 hours a week, that's fine, but you're going to sacrifice some earning potential, because there's going to be somebody there that's going to work 50 hours or 60 hours.
Yes.
Because I guarantee you, I don't care what job I was at, when I was 22, 23, 24 years old, I mean, working 60, 70 hours a week it's nothing to me right now. It does. I mean, it's just, I went to work this morning. We had quarterback training at 6:45 this morning. I just walked in the door at 9 o'clock. We had middle school weight training today till 6:30. It's a 12-hour work day. People, and it's middle of March. This is kind of the business, and it's not me just doing this. This is what you do if you want to be a successful coach, and you just have to give some time up.
And you've been doing it for 29 years.
That's it.
And you told me your youngest is 12.
Yep.
And I imagine you want to coach him.
Yep.
So you're going to at least do it.
Yep.
Another 6.
Yep. Yeah. I got my oldest son is a junior. He starts at tight end for us. And my daughter is a junior, going to be a senior next year. She's a college volleyball player, and she plays at Young Harris College. So, yep.
So that's the plan. 6 more years.
I got at least 6 in me, but what the hell you going to do, Lamb? I mean, honestly, to me, I always think about Paul Bear Bryant. He retired and died 3 months later. And I think, I think one of the reasons my dad's 76, he still goes out and lays puts 1,000 brick in the wall right now is because he does things. I think I don't see work as a bad thing. I don't. And don't get me wrong, I like to go sit on my boat and ride around, fish and drink beer and do some of those things. But I couldn't do that every day. If I did that every day, it would probably drive me nuts.
Well, it's like, man, I can't play golf every day. And I live on a golf course. I mean, I physically can't play golf every day.
Yeah.
But I also can't be around those same guys every day. I mean, I got to go do something. I mean, I'd have to go find something else to do.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to coach. I might coach. I'm not going to teach.
Yeah.
I'm not, and it has nothing to do with the kids. I can't deal with the adults.
Yeah.
And the stupidity that goes along with, it's harder and harder for me to grin and bear it when I know we're not doing right by the kids.
Yeah. I have, I'm at the time in my life where I just don't give a damn anymore. So I just kind of say what I feel. And, I tell people this, and this is my part trying to save American society. Historically, men have been the protectors of civilization. We did it with a spear. We did it with a sword. We did it with a bow and arrow. But we also did it. We were the protectors of our culture and our ideas and the identity of our society. And so we've been told by, people will be nice, don't say anything mean to people. And so we have sat on the sideline and let people say stupid things. And we all are guilty of doing this. You sit in a faculty meeting and somebody says something just off the wall stupid, and everybody snickers and kind of laughs about it. And then they keep saying it. And the next thing you know, 4 years later, it's policy because nobody ever looked at him and said, hey, that's dumb as hell. Why would we ever think about doing that? And look, I really think that's how we've gotten here in our society, is because we as men haven't looked around and go, hey man, that's a terrible idea. Get out of here, because we have tried to be nice.
Yeah, that's
stupid. We've tried to be social.
We're
and
not
just look
doing
at people. No, we're not doing that. We don't do it anymore. People laugh about older people my dad's age, your dad's age. They don't hold their tongue for anybody. And they look at the world and they see these things as being ridiculous. And there's a reason they don't hold their tongue. They're right by not holding their tongue. We shouldn't hold our tongue either. When we see stupidity in society, we should look at it and go, that's a terrible idea. It's going to lead to and rally the troops, not sit around and cower in the corner because somebody may say something mean to us.
Because it's okay to disagree.
It is.
It's okay to have a differing opinion from somebody else.
And not all ideas are good ideas.
No.
Not all innovation is good innovation.
No.
Not all innovation is good innovation. Sometimes change can be good. I've said that change can be good, but a lot of change isn't good. You got to be able to look at some things and go, I think this is a really bad idea, and this isn't what we're going to do. And that's where not just leaders in schools, our leaders in society aren't real good about that. They'll jump on board any stupid ass idea. All you got to do is, look at the last 40 or 50 years in American history.
And we're trying to teach these young men how to have fun playing a game and get them ready to be the next leaders.
Doing the best we can with it,
That's all we can do.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Play
and have a little fun with them along the way.
learn. Hey, look, I think this is what's great about football is, talked about we got to lift everybody up. Rising tide lifts all boats. That's what's great about football. There's only one ball, and for us to be successful, 10 guys have to give of themselves. And it's really more than 10. You got backup tailbacks and scout team offensive linemen. It's what makes football a great sport. Is that one of the greatest contributors that I've ever coached got like 3 carries in his entire career. There was a kid by the name of Larry Mack when I was at Glynn Academy. He was a scout team tailback. And for 3 years, he went to practice and gave us such a great look. And I had great players in front of him. And he killed it every day. And this is what I think is great about football. And people always talk about, but they ask me why I don't give an MVP award. I told them at the banquet, if I'm gonna give an MVP award, I'm gonna give it to Larry Mack, and he didn't have a stat. That's what I think is great about football. That's what I love about it, is that so much from so many people go into having a great season that nobody sees. And if you're a coach, you understand that. The guys who go out on the scout team and bust their hump on the scout team, and coaches who go work on weekends, and guys who help pick up the locker room. And so much goes into being successful with football. And it's so different from every other sport because of that. It is. And I'm not knocking any of those other sports, but football is something that is totally on its of its own being, and it's just different. And if you've never done that, if you've never been a part of it, you can't ever get that. You never understand that. You see it just as a game. You see the quarterback; he's like the pitcher in baseball, but there's so much more to football. It's 11 to the 11th power, the complexity of the game, and that's only the people we see on the field. You know, if the scout team has a bad week, you can lose a game. And nobody gets that unless you've really done it and understood how important all those other role players are. Guys that never get on the field can be for your program. You know, it's why it's the greatest game ever invented.
Absolutely, Coach. And you're one of the best we've got in the state. And I sure do appreciate you coming on with us today. I could probably sit here and talk with you about all kind of nonsense for on and on and on. And I sure hope I can get you back on again where we can lighten it up a little bit and tell some funny stories as well. But a lot of good stuff people just need to hear and understand that behind all the funny tweets and speaking what's on your mind, you're also one of the best coaches we have, been real successful. Really only been two places just doing it. That's what's crazy too.
Yeah. I'm not much of a mover. I do this for my family more than anything. And that's what, that's kind of the stability is really important for me.
Well, that's awesome, Coach. Well, I sure do appreciate you. Thanks for coming on, and look forward to having you on again.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Coach. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
All right, buddy.
Yeah.